Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to lecture number 6 of the course Object Oriented Programming. In the previous lecture, we have seen reference variables and why object passed to a function by reference. I have shown you the example firstly with the simple reference variable, then passing a reference variable to a function, and then we have seen that what is the benefit we are getting to pass the reference of an object to a function. If you remember the distance class, we have a add_dist function where we are passing the reference of the distance object to that function and making that object a constant object. We have discussed this thing in detail in the last lecture, that why that reference should be constant. Then this pointer, the type of the this pointer, that is very important, that this pointer is created by the compiler as soon as the object of any class is created, and this pointer for that object points to the memory that is allocated for that object, right? And the type of this pointer is basically the constant. It is constant. Now it can change. For example, if the object is the employee class object, the type of the this pointer will be a employee static const. That means this is the pointer, this is the constant pointer that is pointing to an employee object. And if the object of the time class is created, then the type of this pointer would be time static const. So the pointer is constant pointing to a time object. And if the object is a constant object, then the type, for example, we create a constant object of employee class, let's say, or a time class noon object, then the type of this pointer for that object would be const time static const. Then this means that it is a constant pointer and it is pointing to a time object which is also constant. Then we have seen how we can do a cascading function call in a single statement. Then dynamic memory allocation using a new and delete operator and the benefit of dynamic memory allocation. And then we have seen that what is the benefit we are getting from the destructor. In today's lecture, we will see static class members, static functions, and static data members. Then we will see the very important concept that is information hiding, and then abstract data type in OOP, container classes, and then proxy classes. So let's see the object's data member. So what happened when we create an object of any class? So each object of a class has its own copy of all the data member of that class, right? So we write the definition of the class, then we declare that we mention that these are the private data member of that class and these are the public functions. And then when we create the object of that class, each object, for example, if we create multiple objects of that class, then each object contains the copy of its own data member while the functions are shared. For example, we have a time class in which there are 3 private data members, and when we create an object noon of time class, memory is allocated. Now noon has its own hour, minutes, and seconds. We create another object that is wake up, and it has memory is allocated for the wake up, and it has its own hours, minute, and seconds. So this is we know so far, right? Static data member. In certain cases, only one copy of a variable can be shared by all the objects of class. So there are some situations where you need that some information must be shared among the object of that particular class. So for that, a static data member is used. So if a data item in a class is declared as static, only one such item is created for the entire class, no matter how many objects are created. So static data member is kind of a global data member, right? So every object, so only one copy of that data member is created, and every object have an access to that static data member. For example, if we have this static data member and we have object 1, object 2, and object 3, now these 3 objects belongs to a same class and they can access to they have access to a static data member. This means that they can modify, read, the value of the static data member. So if object 1 modify the value of static data member from 0 to, let's say, 10, so when object 2 read it, it read the new value, that is 10, right? So static data member is kind of a global variable and whose scope is limited to the class, or we can say whose scope is limited to all the objects of that class. A static data member or static variable is visible only within the class, but its lifetime is the entire program. So it is only visible inside the class, that is, you can access it within the class, but its lifetime is the entire program until if there is no object, still the memory is allocated for the static data member, and if you delete all the object of that class and the program is running, then still the memory is allocated for that static data member of the class. This seems like a global variable, as I have shown you in the previous slide, an example that they actually look like global variables that are shared among all the objects of a class. It continues to exist even if there is no object of the class. So class का कोई object नहीं बना, but still memory उस static data member को allocate हो जाएगी. A static data member or static data item is useful when all objects of the same class must share a common item of information. So अगर किसी class के आप multiple objects बना रहे हैं and you want that these objects must share some common information, some kind of information, then you can make a static data variable, and every object can access to that static data variable, and every object can modify the value of that static data member, right? Uses of static data member. Suppose an object needed to know how many other objects of its class were in the program. For example, we have a, let's say, distance class, and we created an object D1 of that class now, and another object D2 and another object D3. Now we want that all these three objects must know that how many objects of that class has been created. So there is no mechanism until now. Before this static data member, we don't know any such mechanism that we can use it very conveniently. For that, maybe we can write a function if we don't have a static data member. So static data member can solve this problem because it is shared among all the objects of that class. So when D1 is created, it can increment the value of that static data member. When D2 is created, it can increment the value of that static data member, and when D3 is created, it can increment that value, the value of the static data member. So when D1 again access the static data member, he can know that the value is changed from 1 to 3. This means that there are now 3 objects of that class. For example, in a road racing game, a car might want to know how many other cars are still in race, right? So they can have you can have a road racing class, and there you have a static data member that tells that how many cars are still in the race. In this case, a static variable count would be included as a data member of the class, and so all the objects would have access to that variable. Let's see the example. So this is a race class. We have a static data member. So we have a static data member that is whose type is integer and the name is count, and this is the normal data member, car count, car number. And then we have a constructor, a member function, and another member function. And for every static data member that is written inside the definition of the class, it must be defined and initialized with some value outside the class, like here, right? So you have to assign it some value, and you have to define it outside the class. So this definition is a count is a static data member. It belongs to a class race, and the type of the count is int, and it is initialized with the value 0, right? So count is a static data member of a class race, and its type is int. The type of count is int, not the race. The type of count is int. It belongs to a race class, and we are initializing it with value 0. So this is for every static data member. For example, if in a class we have 1, 2 or 3 static data member, you have to define these static data member outside the class before, not in any function outside the function, right? So when you write this thing, when this statement is executed, int race scope resolution operator count equal to 0 semicolon, the memory is allocated for the variable, for the static data member count, and the 0 value is assigned to that variable, right? Now you can see that no object is created for the race class, but still the memory is allocated for the static data member, right? So if you create an object and destroy all the objects, still the memory is allocated for the static data member until the program is running. जब program की execution खत्म हो जाएगी, उस time पे static data member को memory deallocate हो जाएगी. Now you can see in the main function there are the first statement. In the first statement we are creating 3 objects, that is C1, C2 and C3 of race class. So race class के हम 3 objects बना रहे हैं. Now for every object it will call the constructor. So constructor में कौन सी statement execute होंगी? ये वाली statement execute होंगी. And here we are incrementing the count first, and the other thing is we are initializing car number with 0, right? Now after the class, when the static data member definition is executed, the memory is allocated for the variable count and the value 0 is assigned to it. Then in the main function, the first statement is you're creating 3 objects. So first, at the first place, C1 object is created, and then the constructor will be called for C1, the default constructor. It increments the value of count. The value of count becomes 1, and then it initializes the car number with 0. So car number is initialized with 0. So car number is not a static data member. It is a simple data, private data member, and each object of a race class has its own copy of car number, but a count static data member that is global for all the objects of that class. And then the other second object, that is C2, is created, and then the first statement is the count is incremented, it becomes 2, and the car number is initialized with 0. And then C3 object is created, it increments the value of count, it becomes 3, and then the car number is initialized with 0, right? Now in the next statement is C1 dot set car number. So C1 dot set car number. So you are calling set car number function, passing it a value 10, and you are saying this, you're calling this function, passing it value 10, and you are initializing the private data member of that object, invoking object with that value. So 10 will be assigned to the private data member car number of the object C1, right? And then in the next statement, second statement, this function will be invoked with the same function will be invoked with the object C2, and we are passing a value 11 to it. So what this function will do, it will assign the value 11 to the private data member car, that is car number of object C2. And then similarly, set car number is invoked with the value 12 with the object C3. So C3 के जो private data member है car number, उसको value 12 assign हो जाएगी. It's like this, right? And then we have a print data function. So C1 dot print data, you're going to print the data, right? So when you go to the print data function, this is print data, it will display total car is equal to count. So it will display the total car, and total cars are 3 because we create 3 objects. So it will display the value of count, that is currently 3, and then the car number is equal to car number. So the car number of that particular object. Count जो है वो global है, but car number is for the first one is for the C1. C1 का car number display करेगा वो, ठीक है? So total car is equal to 3, car number is 12, right? print data function is executed with object C2. Then it displays the message total car 3, car number is 11. Then this function is executed with C3. It displays the message total car 3 and car number is 12. Right? So a static data member is a kind of a global data member for all the object of that particular class. Each object of that class can access to that data member. It means that it can modify, or it can read, or it can write new value to that variable. Let's see the other version of the same class, but with a different a little bit difference in the main function. So you have to remember one point: every static data member of the class should be redefined again outside the class. So class से बाहर उसको लाजमी define करना है, like here. ठीक है? And उस definition में क्या होगा? You first tell the type, then you tell the class, scope resolution operator, name of the static data member, and then you initialize it with some value. Then of course semicolon. Now in this main function we can see that we are creating first two objects, C1 and C2. So when C1 object is created, the constructor is called. It first the count memory for the count is allocated and value 0 is assigned to count, and then the constructor with C1 object is called. This means that first the memory is allocated for C1, then it increments the count, it becomes 1, and then it assigns 0 to car number, right? And same is the case with C2. It increment the count and then assign 0 to car number. And then we are setting the value of these two objects, that is C1 and C2, with 10 and 11. So the car number becomes 10, and for C2 car number become 11. And then we are printing the data. Now when we call print data function with C1, now the total number of car is 2. So here you can see this object C3 that is not created so until now. So the total count value is 2, total car are 2, and car number is 10. And then you again call the function with C2. It prints the message total car 2 and car count 10. And then you create another object, that is C3, and set its car number to 12. So when that object is created, constructor is invoked, it increments the value of count, it becomes 3. And then it assigns the value 0 to the car number, that is 0. And then you change the value using set car number function and change it to 12, so that value is changed. And then you print the value of C3 object, so it prints the value total car is equal to 3 and car number is 12. So जिस पॉइंट पर जब आप देखें ऑब्जेक्ट बनते जा रहे हैं रेस क्लास के, वो कंस्ट्रक्टर कॉल करेंगे और काउंट की वैल्यू को इंक्रीमेंट करते जा रहे हैं, राइट? Static data member access. How you can access static data member? So public static data member can be accessed using any object of the class or class name. So if the static data member is public, you can use object name, or you can use the class name to acquire the value of that static data member. Because it's public, so you can use the object name. For example, object name dot name of the static data member, that is e1 dot count. E1 is the name of the object and count is the static data member. Or class name and scope resolution operator, name of the static variable. And that is employee count. Right? Employee is the class, scope resolution operator, count is the name of that static data member. Now if a static data member is a private, it can be accessed using a public member function. किसी भी class के member function से access किया जा सकता है उसे. For that you use object name dot public member function name, that is e1 dot get count. So get count is a public function that returns the value of the count. So you can use a name of the object with that function, or you can use a class name and then a scope resolution operator and then the public function, right? For example, employee scope resolution operator get count, right? So here the important point is that from that public function with the object name, the public name of the public function, with that public function you should be able to get or to return the value or to access the value of the static data member, not the non-static data member. ठीक है, या इस point पे भी when you use it with the class name and the public member function. Now that public member function is also a static function basically that is used to acquire the value of static data member. So with the class name, when you call a public function, member function, you should not be accessing the private data member of any object, right? You should only be accessing static data member, not the non-static data member, because if you say okay non-static data member, if you are accessing non-static data member from this public member function, then that would be a compiler error, because this function is not invoked with any object, right? So it's not possible to get the value of the private data member of any object. So get count function should not be accessing the value of the private data member of the class when you invoke it with the name of the class, like this, right? So static member function, a function should be static if it only access static member of the class. A call to a static member does not need an object as a handler, it needs a class name. So static आपके पास function है, और उसके साथ आप ऑब्जेक्ट भी यूज कर सकते हैं, बट स्टैटिक मेंबर फंक्शन शुड नॉट बी एबल टू एक्सेस द प्राइवेट डाटा मेंबर ऑफ द क्लास, बिकॉज यूजुअली आप स्टैटिक मेंबर फंक्शन को क्लास नेम के साथ कॉल करते हैं. You write the class name employee, then scope resolution operator, then get count function. So get count is a static function. It is illogical to access the private data member of the class because you are not calling that function with the object. So what happens if a member function is called with an object? When a member function is called with an object, then what happens? Then the pointer is passed implicitly by the compiler to that function, and that pointer points to that handler or the invoking object of that function. So when you access this is with which you can write or you can access the private data member, right? So if you are not invoking the static member function with an object, but you are invoking it with the class name, then this pointer will not be passed to that static function. So a static function cannot access non-static member function because it does not have this pointer, right? So this pointer is not passed to that function because it is not meant to access non-static data member of the class. Let's see another example, employee example. So in this example we have two private data member. That is a normal private data member. First name, that is a pointer to a first name and pointer to a last name. So this is, we can say this is a pointer to a character and the name of the pointer is first name. This is a pointer, again pointer to a character, name of the pointer is second name. And then the third data member is the static data member, that is int, whose type is int and the name is count, right? Then we have the public function. The first function is of course the constructor. The second one is the destructor, and then we have the constant function first name. So this const at the end tells or represent that get first name and get last name are the constant functions, right? And this function, these two functions returns const character pointer, right? This means that const character pointer is a pointer that is pointing to a constant character. So आप उस pointer की मदद से उन characters को change नहीं कर सकते, right? Then we have a static function whose return type is int and the name of function is get count, right? We will see what does that, okay, that is interesting. Const character static const. Now what does that mean? We will see in detail. It means that, let me tell a little bit. So we can have a two portion for this. Okay, so this is the first portion. This says that a character is a constant character, and this is the second portion, and the second portion says that the character points to that pointer points to a character which are constants. You cannot modify the value of those characters, right? We'll see in detail. So what is this? This is a pointer to a character. It's like this. So you have a pointer that is pointing, that contains the address of the memory, that's where you have a character. So this pointer points to this character. Now what you can do is you can change the value of that character, that is you can change the value of f, you can change the value of that character from f to c, and you can also change the value of that pointer. For example, you have a memory location, another memory location where you store character m, then you can assign the address of that memory location to the pointer. Now the address is 874. Now this pointer is pointing to a new memory location where you store a character. Now in this particular case, you can see neither the pointer is constant nor the character is constant, right? How we can say that? Because we change the value of the pointer and we also change the value of the character, the memory location where you store a character. So previously we have f over here, and the new character store is c now, right? So none of them is constant. In the other case, we have const character static. This means that we have a pointer to a constant character. So we have a pointer, that pointer points to a memory location where you have a character and they are constant. You cannot change the value of those characters. Let me demonstrate this with the help of, let's see, diagram, figure. So this is a pointer and this is a memory location where we have a character f, and we have the address of that memory location in the pointer. This means that this pointer is pointing to that memory location. We assume that 705 is a memory address and 874 is also a memory address, let's say, right? Now we can change the value. What if we change the value? If we change the value of f to c, then this is not allowable. You cannot change the value of the character stored in that memory location. So we have the previous character f, we cannot change its value, right? That is not allowable. And what about the other thing? We have another memory location where we store a character m whose address is 874. We assign that address to a pointer. That is possible. We can assign that address to a pointer and then the pointer points to this new memory location, because in this case the character is constant, the pointer is not constant, right? Pointer is variable. So the value of pointer, that is now 874, before it is 705. So the value of pointer is basically the memory address. So before it is 705 and now it is 874. So that value can be changed because the pointer is not a constant, right? But we cannot change the value of this memory location or this memory location, right? So यहाँ पर अगर f लिखा हुआ है, इसकी value of f से c नहीं कर सकते. Why? Because the character that is pointed by this pointer, they are the constant character, right? So the character is basically the constant. So you cannot change the value of this f or this m, right? Then the other case is character static const. Now the pointer is constant and character is not. So a constant pointer to a character. Let's see the example. So we have a pointer, we have a memory location where we store a character f, and the address of that memory location is, let's say, 705, that is assigned to this pointer, and then this connection is established. Now character points to that memory location where we have a letter or character f. Now we have, let's say, if we want to change the value of f from f to c, we can change it. That is allowable. That has no problem, right? Because the character is not constant, right? The constant thing is the pointer. Now let's say we have another memory location and whose address is 874, and we assign that address to the pointer like this, and we think that this connection is established, but this is not allowable. We cannot change the value of pointer. Once it is assigned, we cannot change that value, right? So this means that this is wrong, and the value of pointer is actually 705, and it is pointing to a memory location where you store a character C. Now in this case, you see the character is not constant, but a pointer is constant, right? Now the last case is const character static const. Now a pointer is constant and it is pointing to a memory location where the characters are stored, and these characters are also constant. So constant pointer to a constant character, right? So if this is a pointer P, it is pointing to a memory location where we have a value F, and if we want to change that, and we assign the address of that memory location, that is 705, to a pointer, now this pointer points to this memory location, and if we want to change the character F at that memory location to C, character C, then it is not allowable, because here in this case the character is also the constant. This means that ये pointer जिस memory location को point कर रहा होगा वहाँ पर character store होंगे, and they are the constant character, so you cannot change the value of these characters. So it will be remain F. So जो पहले एक दफ़ा value assign कर दिया वो वही value रहेगी, वो change नहीं हो सकती, right? Now we have, let's say, another memory location where we have a character M is stored, that address of that memory location is 874. Now if we want to assign that 874 to this pointer, then we think that this connection is established, but this is not allowable because this pointer is a constant pointer. So this pointer is a constant pointer, right? So this is not allowable. The value of the pointer will not be changed. It will be 705, that is, it is pointing to the memory location where we have a letter F. So now it is clear to you what is const character static const, right? Now let's come to our example. Now we have seen that in a get first name function, the return type of these two functions is a pointer, but a pointer to a character, but that pointer is not a constant. Basically the character store in that memory location that is pointed by this pointer, they are the constant, right? So we have const character static, that is the return type, means that this pointer is not a constant pointer, but these character store on the memory location that is pointed by this pointer, these characters are constant characters, right? Why we make it constant? Because when we return the reference or return the address of the memory location, when the get first name function is called, so get first name is a public function, so कोई भी object इसे call कर सकता है. So जब कोई भी object call कर लेगा, then we be getting an address, right? So what we can do is we can access that address and try to modify the value. So this will modify the value of private data member of the class without invoking the public member function of that class. So that should be avoided. और किस तरह से avoid किया जा सकता है कि हम जो pointer return कर रहे हैं, okay, that pointer is not a constant, but it is pointing to characters, and these characters are basically the constant characters, right? Now the get first name function is a constant function. This means that it is not allowable within the definition of get first name or get last name function to change the value of the private data member of the invoking or the handler object. So but return type of the get first name and get last name are const character static. So we return the memory address, right? We return the memory address of the first name, and that is, let's say, 6000, and maybe this is 6009 or 10, let's say. So get first name, return this 6000. Now this return type says that, okay, the pointer contains the value 6000, but using that pointer it is not possible to change this value. So आप जो जिस string को वो pointer point कर रहा है, उस string की value, उस combination of characters को आप change नहीं कर सकते. Why? Because they are constant. This is by writing this keyword over here, constant, right? So if return type character static is non-constant pointer, then it means that one can change the content of that pointer. So const character means the content cannot be modifiable, cannot be changed, right? Let's go and see the program. So this is the program. Now you can see what is this actually. So when you pass a function, when you call this function employee, let's see where we are calling this function. We're calling this function like this. This is the first name, this is the last name, right? Now we make this the pointer the constant pointer, and the pointer pointing to a character, they are also the constant. So what it will do is basically it calculates the length of the first, that is string stored in first, that is, for example, it is Ahmed, AHMAD, there are 6 characters, so it allocates the memory 6 plus 1, because this 1 byte is for the null character. Then you copy the first into first name, that is the private data member, because first name is now pointing to a memory जिसका size जो है वो Ahmed plus null character तक है, ठीक है? Same is the case with the last name. Then you increment the value of count. So why you increment it? Because because count is a static data member, and you want to know that how many object of that class has been created, or we can say that any of the object may want to know how many object of that class has been created until so far, right? And then in Cout to display the message employee constructor for first name and last name called, right? Display first name and last name. And then this is a destructor. Now we allocate a memory dynamically in the constructor. Now we use a delete operator to deallocate that memory in a destructor. So destructor में आप इस तरह से delete operator को use करेंगे. This specifies that first name points to an array of character. ठीक है, एक array को point कर रहा है, that is an array of character. And last name भी एक array को point कर रहा है, array of character को. And then what we do is we decrement the value of count as well. ठीक है, count की value को आपने decrement भी कर दिया है यहाँ पर, right? Because when the destructor is called, one of the object has been destroyed, so the value of count should be decremented by 1. Now this const character static is already known to you. You know, it is a pointer to a memory location where you have a constant character stored, right? Now this is a static function. Now with the first Cout, you are printing the value of the count static data member by calling a get count static public member function using a class name and scope resolution operator, because at this stage no object of employee class has been created. ठीक है, इस पहले statement से पहले कोई object नहीं बना. Now after that statement we are creating the object dynamically by using the new operator. The type of object is employee, and the first name contains Ahmed and second name contains Ali, and then the reference or the address will be assigned to E1 PTR, right? And similarly the reference is assigned to E2 PTR in the second in the third expression here. And then after creating these two objects, right, we display the value of count with an object. तो यहाँ पर आप ऑब्जेक्ट के साथ भी कर सकते हैं, E1 PTR के साथ कर लें, E2 PTR के साथ कर लें, या इस तरह से जिस तरह से क्लास के साथ यूजिंग स्कोप रेजोल्यूशन ऑपरेटर आप गेट काउंट को कॉल कर सकते हैं और वैल्यू मालूम कर सकते हैं. Then I display these two clients. Okay, then it is removing the pointer, deleting the pointer, and so this is to make that pointer no longer further pointing to that free store where the memory, dynamic memory is allocated, right? And then when we delete the pointers, these two pointers, it invoke this destructor, और वो आपके पास message display कर देगा employee called for first name and last name space last name, and then we are going to delete these two addresses where we have dynamic arrays, and then decrement the value of count. Okay, let's compile it and execute it. Now you can see the count value is initially 0, the count is created, and the employee constructor for Ahmed Ali is called, and employee constructor for Saeed Khalid is called. Now the value of count becomes 2 after creating two constructors, after creating two objects, right? Then we call the employee E1, employee 1 is Ahmed Ali, employee 2 is Saeed Khalid, and then the constructor is called, we call the delete operator, delete E1 PTR and delete E2 PTR, right? Like this. And then the destructor will be called when we delete that object. The destructor जब कॉल होगा तो आपके सामने मैसेज डिस्प्ले कर देगा employee call for this employee destructor call for Ahmed Ali and employee destructor call for Saeed Khalid, and then we print the value of count and it becomes 0 then, right? Okay. Now this 0 is to dereference this pointer so that it will be no longer pointing to that memory location, right? And here we print the value of get count, but not with an object, just with the class name. You can print the value of that, you can call the get count function of the class using the object, but for that you must create the object first, right? Now we see what is information hiding. A class normally hides its implementation detail from its client. Basically, in the previous course we have seen this concept as well. When we create a function, right, and we say that the task performed by that function becomes the definition of that function or the body of the function, right? Now, and just we tell the user or the client or the programmer the prototype of the function, that this is the function. Like in the last course, we create a static library and we provide a header file, just the header file containing the definition of the function, containing the prototype of the function. Prototype means the function name, the number of parameters with type, and the return value of that function, right? So this is also the information hiding concept, right? We hide the information, we hide the implementation detail from the user or the programmer, so the programmer only knows that when I call this function, providing these parameters to that function, it gives me this kind of result, right? It performs the task and gives you the result. So a class normally hides its implementation detail from the client. So usually when you make a class, you usually hide the detail of that class. For example, details are the private member function, public functions from the user. You hide the implementation details, right? You just tell that these are the function names. Now you can call these functions and get the functionality, right? So a class normally hides its implementation details from its client. For example, a library contains classes. A static library, it's not a library that is in the university or in the school. It's a library is actually the bundle of classes, and using that you can get some kind of functionality, right? You can call just the functions, or you can create an object from that static library, call the function and get a particular functionality. It contains classes that is in the compiled form to a given user, and given to a user. So compile form में library हम user को दे देते हैं. It contains all the classes, and you also give the header file that contains the definition of the class, right? So user includes header file in CPP file containing main functions and set library path. So यूज़र क्या करेगा, जो उसकी CPP फाइल है जहाँ पर उसका मेन फंक्शन है, वहाँ पर वो जो हम उसको हेडर फाइल देंगे लाइब्रेरी के साथ, उसको इंक्लूड कर लेगा और लाइब्रेरी का पाथ सेट कर लेगा, right? And then compile the file, that CPP file, and use the library functions in his main functions. So main function के अंदर वो लाइब्रेरी के फंक्शन को फिर यूज़ कर सकेगा. Okay, now let's go and let me tell you how we can create a library. Let me create a new library for you. Okay, मैं यहाँ पर सिर्फ वो कॉपी पेस्ट करता रहूँगा, लेकिन आपके लिए एक नई लाइब्रेरी बनाता हूँ ताकि आपको भी इसकी समझ आ सके. So let me open a new Defsee Editor. Okay, so this is a new Defsee Editor. You click on the file, new, and project. So you are going to make a library project, static library project. So click on the project. This new project window will be opened, and then you can click on the static library. The options are Windows application, console application. So until now we have developed all the applications that are console applications, a static library, DLL, and empty project. Now we are going to create a static library, and this is C or C++. It is C++, so click on C++. Let's say the name of the project is project underscore distance. Right, then click OK. So it gives you the option where you want to save it. So let me go to the desktop, and so let's say here we are going to create a new folder, say it distance, and another folder that is library, and another folder that is client. So यहाँ पर इस folder में हम library बनाएंगे, and then we provide the library that is a compiled form of the class and the header file to the client, and client will use this library and the header file in the main function and get the functionality of that library, right? So लाइब्रेरी बनाने के बाद क्लाइंट को हम पास करेंगे, क्लाइंट को हम इस क्लाइंट फोल्डर में हम कॉपी कर देंगे हेडर फाइल और लाइब्रेरी की फाइल जो कि .a एक्सटेंशन के साथ होगी, ठीक है, वो यहाँ पे कॉपी कर देंगे, एंड देन इस क्लाइंट के फोल्डर में ही हम एक और फाइल बनाएंगे .cpp फाइल जिसमें हमारा मेन फंक्शन होगा, एंड वी आर कॉलिंग द फंक्शन ऑफ द लाइब्रेरी, राइट? सो लेट्स सेव दिस प्रोजेक्ट ओवर हियर. दिस प्रोजेक्ट इज सेव. Now let's create a new file and save it on the same folder, distance client library. So library में आके हम इसको सेव कर लेंगे. Let's say the name of file is distance, and that is the header file. Save it. Okay. So this is the header file. Let me copy all the. मैं आपके साथ डेफसी को सामने आपके बना रहा हूँ डेफसी ओपन करके, इसलिए ताकि आपको सारे स्टेप पता चल जाएं. So this is the header file. Let me copy the content, and so this is the header file. So ये वो फाइल है जो आप यूजर को प्रोवाइड करेंगे. Now this header file just contains the class definition with the function prototype, not the definition of the function. So functions की implementation detail को आपने hide कर लिया, right? And then you can create. So you have to right click on the project. You can see there is only one file in the project. Now we are going to create .cpp file that contains the definition of these functions, ठीक है? So इन functions की definition होगी इस file में. ये जो class के function है इन functions की, right? So right click on the project, click on the new file. It creates a new file. Press Ctrl S, file, save, and save it in the library. So you are going to create a library first, right? So the name of this file, let's say, is distance, and it is C++ source file, right? So save it, and let me copy the content. So this is source file. I will explain you this. So now you can see it contains the definition of all the functions that are present in the distance class, because we want to hide the implementation detail of the function from the client or from the user, ठीक है? ये function को किस तरह से implement किया, क्या strategy use किया, क्या algorithm use किया, कितना efficient वो algorithm है. You do not want कि ये तमाम चीज़ें client को पता चलें. क्लाइंट को अपने फंक्शनैलिटी प्रोवाइड करनी है, सो वो फंक्शनैलिटी प्रोवाइड करेंगे बाय हाइडिंग द इम्प्लीमेंटेशन डिटेल सो दैट ही कैन नॉट मॉडिफाई ऑल दोज थिंग्स, राइट? So you know, whenever you have to write the definition of the member function of any class, let's say distance class, member function of distance class, if you have to write the definition of these functions outside the class definition, then the way is you first write the return type of the function, that is must, and then the class name with the scope resolution operator. So this tells the compiler that setDest function belongs to a distance class, right? And these are the parameter of this function. So again, the class name and the scope resolution operator. It is quite possible that you may have another class, right? So यहाँ पर आपके पास एक और class भी हो सकती है, class let's say m distance, that is distance in mile. So let me copy. So let's say it has a float m, private. The only private meta member in this is the distance in miles. So we have a class, one class distance, that is a distance in feet and inches. So we have another class m distance, that represents the distance in miles. So the only data member is miles, right? That's it. Now we have two classes in the header file, right? So in this .cpp file, we have to write the definition of these two classes now, right? So ये ज़रूरी नहीं है कि आपने जो क्लास का नाम रखा है वही फाइल का नाम रखें, ठीक है? और डिस्टेंस मैंने फाइल का नाम भी रख दिया है, और जहाँ पर भी सीपीपी फाइल का नाम डिस्टेंस ही रख दिया है, और यहाँ पर आप कहें कि माइल क्लास का नाम m डिस्टेंस है, तो इससे कोई फ़र्क नहीं पड़ता, राइट? सो यू कैन हैव इट्स ए void m distance set dest float m. And what that function will do, basically it set the distance, that is, so I have to write the definition of all these functions now. Miles is equal to m, right? Then showDest initialize and showDest, copy and paste it over here. Now we just have to write m. Now you know why it is important to write the class name with the function name when you are writing the definition of the member function outside the class. So now this showDest function belongs to a m distance class, and this showDest function belongs to a distance class, right? So enter distance in miles and just remove it. This is just C in miles, right? Initialize miles is equal to 0.0. Just remove it. Okay, show distance miles is equal to miles. That's it, right? I hope that it works. So let's compile it. Now the file is compiled and it create project underscore distance.a file. So that is a library file actually. Now we can use this library file. So if we come to the folder, so this is a distance. Here we have a client and library. So within the library you can see this is a library class, distance.a. So that is a library file. So we copy this file and this header file. Okay, we give these two things to the client via email or whatever mechanism. Now with these two things, client is not able to know the implementation detail, right? उसको जो मेंबर फंक्शन है क्लास की, उसकी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन डिटेल का नहीं पता कि आपने उसको किस तरह से इम्प्लीमेंट किया, क्या स्ट्रेटजी यूज़ किया, क्या एल्गोरिथम यूज़ किया है. नाउ लेट मी ओपन अनदर Defsee. There's one more thing I want to tell over here is that So you can see in this is the distance.cpp file, and there is no main function, so this is not an executable file. You can see these two options, run and compile and run, they are disabled. Why? Because this file doesn't contain any executable file, right? So when you are going to create a static library, it doesn't contain any executable function, that is main function. So जब main function नहीं होगा तो वो executable file नहीं होगी, right? So you can make a compile form of that library and give it to the user. So हमने एक header file बना ली है एंड एक हमने cpp फाइल बना ली है. cpp फाइल के अंदर हमारे पास तमाम मेंबर फंक्शंस की इम्प्लीमेंटेशन डिटेल हैं, और हेडर फाइल के अंदर हमारे पास क्लास की डेफिनेशन है विद द प्रोटोटाइप ऑफ द मेंबर फंक्शन, राइट? मेंबर फंक्शन की सिर्फ और सिर्फ प्रोटोटाइप है इसमें. ओके, वी मिनिमाइज इट, वी ओपन अ न्यू Defsee एडिटर. नाउ लेट्स ओपन दिस. सो अगर आप इस फाइल को ओपन करके देखेंगे .a फाइल को, देयर इज नथिंग, इट्स नॉट अ रीडेबल फाइल. व्हाट यू कैन डू इज यू कैन ओपन द डिस्टेंस फाइल. आप डिस्टेंस फाइल को देख सकते हैं ओपन करके. ओके, दिस इज द फाइल. नाउ व्हाट वी आर गोइंग टू डू इज वी क्रिएट अ न्यू प्रोजेक्ट. वी क्रिएट अ न्यू प्रोजेक्ट. नाउ दिस इज अ कंसोल एप्लीकेशन प्रोजेक्ट, जो यूजुअली हमारे पास प्रोग्राम होते हैं, कंसोल एप्लीकेशंस होती हैं. एंड दिस इज अ C++ प्रोजेक्ट. नाउ वी राइट द नेम project underscore, let's say main. Now this is a project that contains basically the main function, right? Okay, let's save it in the same place, that is desktop. So distance हमारे पास एक फोल्डर मैंने बनाया था, इसके अंदर लाइब्रेरी है, क्लाइंट है. सो लाइब्रेरी जो है वो आपके पास है, क्लाइंट जो है ये क्लाइंट के साइड है, राइट. सो क्लाइंट जो है वो लाइब्रेरी को एक्सेस नहीं कर सकता. वो किसको एक्सेस कर सकता है? वो जस्ट यहाँ पर जो लाइब्रेरी है उसको एक्सेस कर सकता है. सो सेव दैट प्रोजेक्ट इन दिस फोल्डर. ओके, इट कंटेन्स द मेन फंक्शन एंड दैट इज द मेन फंक्शन. यू कैन सेव दैट फंक्शन in the same folder, that is in the client. Save it. Okay, now when you come in the client side, so this is a header file and we are going to use that header file. So what we do is just include this header file, that is dist and distance.h. Now let me copy and paste the code. Okay, this is the main file. Copy and let's paste it over here. So Control S. So this is our main function. This is the header file provided by the programmers, right? So we are the client now. We just use the functionality of these classes by using the library. Now we have to do some step to include the library when we are compiling this main file, right? Because if you compile it right now, it gives you an error, right? So redefinition of class distance and all these things. So there are a lot of errors here. Redefinition error is now be removed. So now there is a undefined reference to distance set dest because there is no definition of set dest. Now we have to tell that Defsee that for this project include the library. So we got the library in the client folder. So client side is the client side. He has the library. Now we'll use this library and we are going to tell the Defsee compiler that use this library to compile this file. So we come to the tools and then project, come to the project options. So जो ऊपर मेन्यू आ रहा है प्रोजेक्ट में आ जाएं, प्रोजेक्ट के बाद प्रोजेक्ट ऑप्शन को क्लिक करें, you will get this window, right? So in this window what you can do is open the direct parameters first. So there are journal tab, file, compiler, parameter. So open the parameter tab. Now here it says linker, and there's a button add library or object. So you are going to add library, so click on it and go to the same folder, distance, and in the client we have a library that is project_distance. So client जो folder है, that is the client side actually, and library जो folder है, that is the developer, that is the you guys, we guys, right, who write the library. ठीक है, so हमने library में तमाम functionality लिखी, then we compile it and we create a library, then we give that library and the header file on the USB, or we can send the client via email, or we can burn it on the CD and give it to the client, right? Now we go to the library and click the button open. So that library is included over here now. Then the next tab is the directories tab. So parameters के बाद आप directory tab पे आ जाएंगे. So this is a directory tab. Now here you have a sub tabs, library directory, include directory. So we have to provide this library directory and include directory. ठीक है, ये दोनों हमें डायरेक्टरी प्रोवाइड करनी है. सो लाइब्रेरी डायरेक्टरी के लिए सबसे पहले यहाँ पर आप आ जाएं, दिस बटन इज टू ऐड द पाथ ऑफ द लाइब्रेरी डायरेक्टरी. सो क्लिक ऑन इट. So this is a distance folder. Within the distance folder we have a client folder. So within the client folder, the client, this is our library directory. Library directories means directory is the folder, right? It's another name for the folder. So this is the folder in which we have the library. Click on it and click OK button. So this is the path. You can press add to include that path. Then you have to do the same procedure to include the directories, okay, and add. So you have to provide the path for the library directories and include. ठीक है, so library कहाँ पर है, वो तमाम directories का path देना है आपने, और include file कहाँ पर है, जो कि आपने header file include करनी है, उसका path भी देना है. Then you click OK. Now everything should be fine. There's no error, and you are going to use the functionality of your library, right? आप अपनी लाइब्रेरी की फंक्शनैलिटी को यूज कर सकते हैं. यू कैन रन इट. लेट मी चेंज द स्क्रीन साइज फर्स्ट. okay, enter feet, let's say 10 feet, enter inches 5.65 inches, and this is the answer, right? So तमाम के तमाम वो फंक्शन लाइब्रेरी के फंक्शन कॉल करेगा, right? So let's say if we make changes in the library, we can do it, right? For example, we can say, okay, when the constructor is called, we display the message. Okay, we can go to the library. So this is our library. These are the functions, and well, there's no constructor for that class, but we can make a constructor. Let's say distance, okay, we shouldn't provide the definition here, we just write the constructor, and then here we write distance, that is the constructor, and within the constructor we can write, let's say, cout distance constructor end line, right? So कुछ चेंजेस कर दिए हमने कि जब भी डिस्टेंस क्लास का कंस्ट्रक्टर कॉल होगा, डिफॉल्ट कंस्ट्रक्टर तो मैसेज डिस्प्ले करेगा डिस्टेंस कंस्ट्रक्टर, राइट? So we save it, compile it again, it produces that file. You can go to the folder. This is our folder library. Now हमने ये फाइल और डिस्टेंस फाइल दोबारा कॉपी कर देंगे, क्लाइंट को सेंड कर देंगे. जस्ट यहाँ पे कॉपी और पेस्ट कर दें, राइट? नाउ वी कैन गो टू आवर मेन, reload it, yes. So now compile it. So this is our main function. ये client side है. Compile it, compile कर लिया, उसके बाद execute कर लिया. I think अभी तक लोड नहीं हुई शायद. It should display the message. Add library. Let me check what is the problem. It should display the message because we create these two objects, dist1 dash2 of the distance class. It should display the message destructor constructor1 constructor2, and then okay, add and remove the previous one. Delete. Desktop distance client. Okay, add. Okay, I'll compile it, close. Let me check out what is the. So this is a constructor. It should be invoked. Distance, yes, everything seems okay. Feet को हम 0 से इनिशियलाइज कर लेते हैं और इंचेस को भी हम 0 से इनिशियलाइज कर लेते हैं. Control S, compile it. Okay, what I do is मैं लाइब्रेरी में आके सबसे पहले लाइब्रेरी को डिलीट कर रहा हूँ, राइट. सो लेट्स डिलीट दिस लाइब्रेरी एंड अगेन कम ओवर हियर. ओके, ये हमारी लाइब्रेरी है का कोड है लाइब्रेरी का बेसिकली, जिसका डिस्टेंस क्लास है, एम डिस्टेंस क्लास है. नाउ आई एम गोइंग टू कंपाइल इट. सो नाउ इट क्रिएट अ लाइब्रेरी एंड दिस इज द हेडर फाइल, right. So what now I'm going to the folder again and copy this library and the header file, copy and paste it to the client folder. That is, we are providing this to the client. Replace, so they are both replaced. And now we are going to the client side, that is where our main function is. So this is the main function. Let me compile it again, close, and 12. That is strange. Why it is not? So here it should call the constructor and delete it. Let me delete all the directories and all the path. Okay, and then compile it again. Now it is saying undefined reference. Okay, so in the project, if I include these directories, then let's see, maybe it comes again. जो हमने चेंज किया है, मैं चाह रहा हूँ कि जो चेंज हमने किया है वो अपीयर हो जाए. ठीक है, सो क्लाइंट में डायरेक्टरीज हैं, ऐड. यही बात हमारा इंक्लूड फाइल का है जो कि हेडर फाइल है. इसको भी ऐड कर लेते हैं. पैरामीटर की फाइल में आ जाएं, ऐड लाइब्रेरी. सो लाइब्रेरी जो है वो क्लाइंट्स के फोल्डर में पड़ी है, उसको भी ऐड कर लिया. ओके, एंड कंपाइल इट, क्लोज, execute it. That is strange. Let me look at why the changes are not, why it is not. Basically, when this object is created, it should call a constructor. Now the strange thing for me is that it is not calling that constructor, because in the library I have provided the definition of the constructor. This is the constructor, and I write that this is a constructor, so it should call the constructor and we get this message. Okay, let me check another thing. Let's come to the main function again, and let's display the content of these two objects, whether they are 0 or not. Now you can see the constructor is called. Okay, now it start working. Now it says the constructor is called distance constructor because we create these two objects, dest1 and dest2, and then we call the set dest function, and it set the distance of dest1, and then get dest function is called with dest2, and it is prompting a user to input some value. Now user input some value and display all the things. So this is how you can make the changes in the library, compile it again, and give that library again to the client. So this is the you are hiding the information, basically the information that is the implementation detail of the member function of your class from the client by providing it the library to the client. So that is end of our lecture number 6. Thank you very much.